My grandfather always said, "Don't go into the cellar if you hear flies buzzing." I should have listened. He died at 94, and that saying remained the strangest part of his legacy. My brother Mark and I used to laugh about it as kids. It seemed to come out of nowhere, just one of those irrational, dark little warnings old people sometimes give to keep their grandchildren safe from something undefined. Grandfather lived in an old house in a village where he'd spent nearly his entire life. After his death, the house passed to us. Cleaning it out was sad but necessary. We decided to start with the cellar, the place he'd always mentioned in his warning. The house felt still and heavy with memory. The cellar door was in the kitchen, a thick wooden slab with an iron ring for a handle. Mark pulled it open. A cool, damp smell rose up. Earth, old potatoes, preserved fruit, nothing unusual. We carried flashlights down the steep stone steps. The cellar was exactly as we remembered. Shelves of dusty canning jars, old tools hung on the walls, a stack of wooden crates. We began boxing up anything that looked worth keeping. It was slow, quiet work, filled with the kind of silence that makes you whisper. Then, about an hour in, we heard it. A faint, low buzzing, like flies but not quite. It was steady, rhythmic, almost like a hum. It seemed to come from behind the stone wall at the far end of the cellar. Mark shone his light toward the sound. Probably a crack in the foundation. "Bees or wasps nesting," he said, but his voice was tight. Grandfather's words echoed in my head. "Don't go into the cellar if you hear flies buzzing." We exchanged a look. The rational part of me argued, it's an old house. Of course there are insects, but the hum, it felt wrong. It wasn't angry or frantic. It was patient. Observant. "Let's just check it out," Mark said, against every instinct telling me to leave. He walked toward the back wall, and I followed, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Behind a large, empty wine rack, we found a narrow gap in the stonework, not a natural crack, but a space between two large stones, almost like a doorway that had been crudely filled in. The humming was clearer here. It vibrated in my teeth. One of the stones was loose. Mark, without a word, braced his shoulder against it and pushed. With a grating sound, it shifted inward, revealing darkness. The air that rushed out was cold and smelled of wet earth and something else, something metallic and sweet like old blood and honey. The humming grew louder, enveloping us. It was coming from the dark space beyond. Our flashlights cut into the blackness. It wasn't a natural cavern, but a small, hidden room. The walls were lined with strange symbols carved into the stone, crude, repeating patterns that swirled and intersected. And in the center of the room, on the dirt floor, was a circle of what looked like salt, now mostly scattered. In the middle of the circle lay a small, leather-bound book. Mark stepped over the salt line and picked it up. The humming seemed to pulse around him. He opened it. It was grandfather's handwriting, but frantic, jagged. "They are not flies," the first page read. "They are the sound of emptiness learning to sing. They mimic. They hunger. The salt holds them, and the words in this book bind them. Do not break the circle. Do not let the humming inside your head." The pages that followed were filled with diagrams, warnings, and descriptions of rituals, ways to quiet the hollow ones. Grandfather hadn't been senile. He'd been a keeper. A warden. As we read, the humming changed. It formed a pattern, a tune. And then, from the darkness beyond the small room, a voice called out. It was grandfather's voice, tired and soft. "Boys, is that you? I've been waiting." My blood froze. Mark's face went white. We both knew that voice. We'd heard it our whole lives. But grandfather was gone. We'd buried him. "Mark, come help me." "I'm stuck," the voice said, gentle, pleading. Mark took a step toward the source of the voice, deeper into the dark. I grabbed his arm. "No, it's not him. You read it, they mimic." But the voice was so perfectly his, so real. "Please," it sighed, a sound full of grandfatherly warmth and strain. "It's so dark here." The humming swelled, harmonizing with the voice, weaving into it. It was beautiful and horrifying. Something moved in the shadows, not a shape, but a suggestion of one, like heat haze over pavement. It shifted, and for a second I saw the outline of a tall, thin man. Then it was gone. Mark, in a daze, pulled his arm from my grip and walked forward. "Grandpa? Mark, no." I screamed. He stopped at the edge of our flashlight's reach. The thing in the shadows moved again, and this time it was closer. The humming focused into a single, coherent sound, grandfather's voice, but stripped of all warmth, flat and dead. "Thank you," it said. The hidden room went silent. The humming stopped. Mark stood perfectly still for a moment, then turned back to me. His face was calm, blank. "Let's go upstairs," he said. His voice was his own. But his eyes, they were just a little too still. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. It was just the wind. An old pipe, maybe. He walked past me, back through the cellar, up the stairs. I followed Nam. We didn't speak the rest of the day. We locked the cellar door. That night, over a quiet dinner, Mark talked about selling the house quickly, for any price. He sounded normal, rational, but last night, I woke up to a sound. A low, steady humming coming from his room down the hall. And this morning, at breakfast, he looked at me and said, "You know, I've been thinking. We should really clear out the rest of the cellar. There might be more family things down there." He said it in his voice, but I heard the other hum underneath it. And I remembered the last line in grandfather's journal, scrawled in shaky script. "Once they learn your voice, they never forget. And they always want more."